Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Muna Kangson. I am the Manager of Communications, Programs and Events at the Cambridge Public Library. I welcome you to the 50th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day Lecture on behalf of our administration and staff. Tonight's program is co-sponsored by the Office of Honorable E. Dennis Simmons, the Mayor of Cambridge, the City Manager's Office, MBK Cambridge, and the Cambridge Public Library Foundation. At the Cambridge Public Library, we welcome all, we inspire minds, and we empower community. We support a Cambridge where everyone has equitable opportunities to learn, people lead their best lives, and democracy thrives. The library's programming provides an opportunity for civic dialogue, conversation, and learning, which includes exploring a wide range of views. You're welcome to visit our website to learn more about what we're doing at the library, or to sign up for our email list to get updates about some programs and events happening here. Tonight's event is supported by the members of the Communications Programs and Events team, including Peterson Blank, Zachary Bond, Madeline Kolka, Sadia Diri, and Elizabeth Edwards, and Sarina White. I also want to acknowledge our colleagues from the facilities management team for helping set up the spaces. A few housekeeping matters before I invite the Director of Libraries, Dr. Macaulay, to give some remarks. Please put your cell phones on mute during the lecture. Restrooms are out that door, down the hallway to the left. Our partners, Potter Square Books, has some books out in the hallway for sale. Please pick up a copy because we'll also have a book signing after the keynote. A small reception will take place after the lecture. The reception will take place in the community room, which is down this way, down the hallway. Tonight's program will proceed according to the following schedule. We'll hear welcome remarks from the Director of Libraries, Dr. Macaulay, followed by a performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing by Pilaya Osset. Mayor Simmons will then give welcome remarks on behalf of the city and introduce our keynote speaker, Reginald Dwayne Betts. I hope you enjoy this program, and I hope you're proud of your public library for uplifting and celebrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King over 50 years. You're welcome to applaud for the library. It is now my pleasure to invite the Director of Libraries, Dr. Macaulay, to give some remarks.
Thank you, the one and only Muna Kangson, folks. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, whether you're here in person or virtually. We are so excited to have you here. As you just heard from Muna, our mission is to welcome all, inspire minds, and empower community in support of a more equitable Cambridge. This very mission is rooted in the work, thinking, and legacy of Dr. King, and it forefronts our commitment to promoting greater diversity, equity, and inclusion, both here at the library and in the wider world. As you know, the library's commitment to these values is not new, and as Muna just shared, this is the 50th installment of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day Lecture Series. For the past half century, we have invited prominent Black leaders and intellectuals to reflect on Dr. King's legacy, to remind us of how his life's work continues to resonate in a changing world, and to reckon with the work that's left to be done. We are so grateful to host Reginald Dwayne Betts, a poet, memorist, a lawyer, and CEO and founder of Freedom Reads, a visionary nonprofit dedicated to installing libraries on prison cell blocks across the country. I want to thank the foundation, the Cambridge Public Library Foundation, for supporting this program tonight, and to our stakeholders who are here, including some trustees, as well as some foundation and friends members. Please join me in welcoming Palia Osset to the stage for Lift Every Voice and Sing. Thank you.
Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound high as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn has died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand here at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you all.
Great evening, everyone. We're here to be inspired and to be renewed and to be restored. We're on the precipice of some very different times. And so these commemorations, these moments, these gatherings, this coming together is just so very important for us. Because one, it's restorative, but it's also optimistic. And I've decided that I'm going to be optimistic. I hope that you'll join me. It's really an honor to be here and join you at the 50th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day Lecture. Doesn't seem like it's been that long. And on behalf of the city of Cambridge, I just welcome you to this meaningful gathering. Dr. McCauley, members of the library board, friends all, as we enter into this period of remembrance, I call it, let's be mindful to be thankful, to be thoughtful. And while things are so challenging, as I always say to my children, let's be kind. You know, this event, now in its 50th year, stands as a testimony to our deep and enduring commitment to the ideals of Dr. King, things that he championed: justice, equity, but most of all, when I think of Dr. King, I think of empathy. His unyielding belief in the transformative power of community. I don't know if many of you know that Dr. King actually came to Cambridge. Do people remember that? Raise a hand. Show of hands. Okay, there you go. There's a few of us. He came to the first, what was then called the First Church in Cambridge, right there in Central Square, 5 Magazine Street. And it was one of those profound moments that I'm happy to live in a city that would have the good sense to invite him to be in our midst and walk with us. So when we think about these lectures, over the decades, this lecture has brought people together, not just to honor Dr. King's life or to think of his memory, or think even about what ifs. You know, you ever say, what would Dr. King do? Kind of moments. But it also brings us together to challenge ourselves, challenging ourselves to bring his legacy forward. Be ambassadors of what Congressman Lewis would say, good trouble. As we reflect on Dr. King's teachings, it's impossible not to draw parallels between the struggles of the past and the challenges of today. Let me just say that again. The struggles of the past and the challenges of today. You know, we live in a time of deep uncertainty where the storm clouds are gathering in Washington, cast long shadows over our collective hope. Many feel the weight of anxiety about what lies ahead. But when I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when I think about his legacy, it reminds me, and I want it to remind us, that the strength of our convictions is measured in the moments of difficulty, not in comfort. You know, Dr. King often spoke of the inescapable network of mutuality that binds us together. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And these words compel us to recognize our shared humanity, to resist the forces that seek to divide us, reminds us to stand together in defense of justice. And even when it feels like the odds are against us. I want to acknowledge and just be mindful and grateful tonight. And I believe, is Representative Decker here? I don't see her. Well, I'm going to talk about her in her absence. Hopefully she'll be able to join us. Because here's a woman who has dedicated herself to that shared mission, her tireless advocacy and commitment to living up members of our community. And I know it inspires me to be hopeful and to move things forward. I also listen to my 11-year-old granddaughter, who is a very, very big optimist. And she always says to me, you know, they don't call me grandma, they call me mama. She says, Mama, it's all gonna be okay. It's all gonna be okay. And that's what I want us to remember in the context of Dr. King's life, his legacy, to remember that it's all gonna be okay. That we have lived through tough times. We are resilient. So as we gather here in the main lecture hall, virtually across the city, let us remember that this event is not the only commemoration. It's not the only commemoration, but it's not only about commemoration, it's about action. So I want you to ruminate on that a little bit. Think about what is it I didn't say I didn't say you. What are we gonna do? What are we going to do on a daily basis to make sure we lift up and carry forward Dr. King's dream? It could be mentoring a young person, standing up for someone's voice who's been silenced, or simply choosing to be kind. Test it out one day. Have you ever gone up to somebody, they say hello, and they say, how are you? And you say, oh, I banged my foot. And they say, oh, that's great. So you knew they weren't half listening. So I want us to be intentional. I want us to be very intentional about just being kind, because even that kindness makes a huge difference. And finally, I have to extend my gratitude to two people. One, where's Muna? To my good friend Muna Kangson. When I first became mayor, Muna worked for me, and he was, other than always full of activities and wanting to find something for us to do, you know, Muna would come by and he'd say, I've got an idea. You know, and I had to say to him one day, you know, every time you come or you call, you've got something for me to do. But that's okay, because his heart is in the right place. But the other person who I see as not only a strong role model, but someone that really gets it. And because she gets it, we get to be in this place and participate in these programs, is Dr. Marie McCauley. I want to also thank the Cambridge Public Library and that incredible team of people that get together, because this doesn't happen on its own. And so thank them, from all of us to them, for making sure that we could be here to enjoy this wonderful program. Their incredible work in organizing these events and ensuring that what happens here has an enduring and long-lasting impact. And I do want to mention my little favorite branch library, which is the Central Square Branch Library, for what they're going to be celebrating earlier this week and further enriching the city's reflection on Dr. King's legacy. So tonight as we mark the 50th anniversary, let us recommit. Let's recommit to building a community and a nation that truly reflects Dr. King's vision of justice, his vision of compassion and opportunity for all people. So tonight, it's my additional pleasure, other than to give you words of encouragement, is to introduce our keynote speaker. Now, when I met him, the first thing he said is, what do books mean to you? And I had to think about it for a minute. You know, I'm an only child, and so no siblings, so books were my friends, books in the library. And when he said, what books mean to you? I said, it's liberation to the soul. Having a bad time, pick up a good book. Having a good time, pick up a good book. Go to the library. Just walk through the rows. And so I'm so pleased, so very pleased, that our keynote speaker, Mr. Reginald Dwayne Betts, is here with us this evening. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Mr. Betts is a poet, a lawyer, and the executive director of Freedom Reads, a nonprofit organization that is transforming lives by bringing literature to some of the most isolated corners of our society, our prisons. Through the Freedom Library Initiative, Dwayne is opening the door to knowledge and imagination for those who have been denied it for far too long. As a 2021 MacArthur Fellow, Dwayne has been recognized for his groundbreaking work in literature and in law. His poetry and essays have illuminated the devastating impact of incarceration and violence on individuals and communities, while also pointing the way toward hope, redemption, and transformation. His voice is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is a potential for light. It is these times of great uncertainty, his work inspires us to confront injustice with resilience and imagine a better, more equitable world. It is an honor to introduce our speaker, whose work aligns so closely with the principles of Dr. King, those principles that he held dear. So please join me by giving a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Reginald Dwayne Betts.
Good evening. You know, these things are always humbling because you sit in the audience. Well, first, you don't even sit in the audience. You arrive just late enough to be on time, but to see if other people were there. Sometimes even when you pull up, you recognize the place is special. Of course, you know it's special if it's a library. And then you listen to people talk about everybody who put the thing together, and you realize something. You couldn't say their names again to save your life. So you hope nobody recognizes that you run to grab the program. And you say to Muna Kankson, thank you. To Dr. Maria McCauley, thank you. To Pelea Osset and Dan Peppers, thank you. To the Honorable E. Denise Simmons, thank you. I mean, I gotta tell you, one of the cool things about listening to the people who speak before you is it says something about how important others think the event is. It also is like humbling because then you're in the audience like, man, I am supposed to follow those folks. I mean, you wouldn't actually imagine my name being associated with an event like this. And maybe that's part of what is so humbling about it all. It's not just how talented the people were who came before me. It is how you listen to them talk about what this event means. And you know that it means that somehow you can make decisions that live your ethics, even if that wasn't your intention. I mean, part of me feels like I was invited because I'm really good at the things that I do. Part of me feels that way. But part of me feels like it is a reality that when an institution like this says that we will invite somebody who has 3 felony convictions to share a program with the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that you had an audacity to zoom it out all over the place. Now, my mother, she has questions. Like, she was like, how's the registration closed? She was like, I mean, did they close the front door? And I realized there are not enough words for joy in this language. Not like in German, where a man can whisper a phrase for relief that roughly translates to, it felt like a stone falling from my heart. The gods must not know the things I wanted in this world. In prison, a letter is called a kite, as if words alone can gift a man wings. And I want to tell you that my body is a kite swept into the wind. To say some days my heart is the wildest, hungriest thing I know. Whatever about choices. Follow me now, the erratic thing that knocks against my ribcage says, and I have. Everywhere. Off cliffs, with names I cannot pronounce. Back into prisons, to walking Alec in a park with Debbie, to my son's basketball games, to weeping, and to down on my knees, to something I've never actually called joy, but just might be. That remembering of all the things I believed needed letting go, only to learn the raft in which I ride into my todays was built with them. Today, I get to tell you 3 stories. The first story is just, it is wild, really. And I'm gonna see if I can't tell these stories in a way that makes it believable. Now, I actually am having trouble believing the thing happened. I'm gonna start with that. First, today they published, now, the King family had never before published the essays. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was such a beautiful writer that I think of the speeches as essays. Even if they were extemporaneous, I think of them as essays. How do you think and full out ideas in that way? How do you speak and full out ideas? So the speeches had never been published before like as individual books. And the family decides that they're going to partner with a publisher and do it. The publisher is HarperCollins. And the first book was I Have a Dream. And they wanted to put the book in the prisons. They asked a friend of mine, does he have ideas about how that could happen? And they say, well, I think Dwayne can make it happen. I've run an organization called Freedom Reads. I founded it in like 2020. We build libraries in prison. We build freedom libraries and we place them in prison cell blocks. The first freedom library we built, we placed in a gutted out cell in MCI Norfolk, which is here in Massachusetts, which is a prison that Malcolm X served time in. Anyway, because I do such things, people think that I could do other things, and I figured, why do people keep believing this except this is so cool? So we put 1,000 or so copies of the I Have a Dream book in the prisons. But I got a chance to talk to them about the project, and they was telling me about the project, and I was like, wait. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ever write anything about prison? And have you ever been on the phone with somebody and they look at you with such a stank face that you like hear it? Man, when they said letter from Birmingham jail, I feel so ashamed. I was like, no, wait. I don't know. Nah, hold. I think I should write the introduction for the letter from a Birmingham jail. Dwayne, you know that's not what we called you to talk about, right? That's a good story, but I'm just saying No, the story you just told us was actually quite amazing. Except, the family has to approve the people. No, I mean, they would consider you. We go back and talk to them. Yeah. I was thinking to myself, well, why did you tell me the family had to get involved with this? Why would they pick somebody like me? And listen, like, look, come on, man. It's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I would believe a publisher would make that kind of mistake. I'm not even being funny. You got to step back and think about this. This is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They are publishing the speeches for the first time as books. I'm just really impulsive. If I thought that somebody had to give permission for me to do it, I would not have asked. That seems absurd. But I asked. 2 weeks later, I get the email, and it was like, oh, Dwayne, you would not even believe this. But it was a list of people who had been pre-approved. Well, first, you should know that Letter from a Birmingham Jail is the only book that we don't have a person to write about. And there's a list. Why does this keep doing that to me? Don't you hate when people make mistakes and they blame inanimate objects for the mistake? They say your name was already on the list. I mean, like, your name was already on the list. And so today, the book comes out. And part of what I would say too, what I find beautiful about this is this might be the third occasion I've had an opportunity to give a speech like this. And I think the institution that invited me, they were never aware of this book being in the works. They were never aware of the idea of the book. And yet I was invited, which I find deeply beautiful. And so now, 3 stories. 1, the first time I cried in prison. It was the day I went to court, the first time I went to court. I guess I imagined that because I was 16 years old, I would get to go home, that I would get a do-over. I had carjacked somebody. I had confessed to carjacking somebody. And I confessed to having carjacked somebody with a gun. And I still imagined that I would get a do-over. It was December 8th, 1996. And when I realized that I would miss Christmas, I just couldn't stop weeping. Second story. The second and only other time I cried in prison, I had been locked up at this point maybe a little bit over a year. I was in this place called the Southampton Correctional Center. Now, for me, the Southampton Correctional Center was famed because it was in Southampton, Virginia. And when I was in high school, I used to read books in class that had nothing to do with the subject. I remember being in a history class and I was reading Sherlock Holmes. And the teacher didn't get upset with me. And I said, oh, that's a good book. And I would ask the teacher about a book that the teacher had on his desk and ask if I could read it. And it was a philosophy book, and I read it. And the teacher would later try to invite the whole class to the Holocaust Museum, and that would fall through. But then the teacher during the summer would say, would any of us want to go anyway? And I said, sure, I would let her go. And I went to the Holocaust Museum. I was a teenager, and this was the summer before I go to prison. We had been talking about philosophy, and I told him I wanted to learn more about philosophy, and he said that I should read this book called Sophie's World. Now, Sophie's World was about this young girl who was distracted through history, through philosophy, and I was going to learn about all of these philosophers. So I get to the county jail, and I'm taking 12th grade English because in a strange thing that I shouldn't brag about because I had carjacked somebody and I did it and I pled guilty and I was going to prison. So this thing I'm about to say is not worthy of bragging about, but still you should know that I skipped the 12th grade and I got my high school diploma on my way to prison. I didn't get to collect my $200 or anything like that, but I graduated from high school early. And part of doing that was because I had this English teacher that was amazing. She showed me love. She made me believe that I was valued, even though I was on my way to prison. I learned that books could show you a world. And I asked her to get me Sophie's World because I wanted to learn about those things. She did not get me Sophie's World because she said that I was slightly mistaken. She said it must have been this book. And she gave me Sophie's Choice. Humbled me because I thought I was suffering. And then why will I not remember this brother's name? But you know what? You know what though? I do not remember his name, but I am such a feminist that I remember his wife's name, Rose Garland. And I once met her. Lovely woman. I then read Confessions of Nat Turner, which takes us back to Southampton. And I'm in Southampton. And I'm thinking about, I guess in some sense, Nat Turner, right? But that's because I want to feel like my time does not belong to me. I want to feel like my time belongs to whatever thing that would make my mother feel like it wasn't her who failed me. So I needed racism. I needed it to be about racism. Even then, I needed to understand how metaphor could help me feel better about myself. But then I'm in Southampton, and it's one of these MLK days, and I'm hearing this story about the dogs, and I realized, like, I had wasted my life to joyride. And forever, I had no real explanation for why that made sense. And I mean, you carry the thing with you. And what happens is every day you imagine you're finding ways to make recompense. And it took a long time actually for me to pause and realize that part of what has always frustrated me about the stories that we tell about prison, even the stories that I've told about prison, part of what has always frustrated me about those stories is that it buys into this lie of certain kind of black people being sui generis. One time, Elizabeth Alexander gave me an essay to read. It was called A Black Man Said Sorbet. And what it was is a warning, not to fall into this belief that because your story is a certain thing that you should be praised. So anyway, I'm thinking that it's a need to remember that in prison, there are another series of stories that aren't told. About the first person that told me it was possible to learn Spanish because they were speaking Spanish and they had taught themselves Spanish. About the sale partner I had that taught me who Tesla was. Like literally the Tesla person. Told me about the Niagara Falls and learned how to, do all kinds of wild things with electricity. All of the random acts of kindness I experienced in prison. And I thought, what does it mean to hold on to that while they were happening in prison? What does it mean to try to contribute to that? I mean, honestly, I thought about what we were all trying to do to be more than whatever landed us in prison. And I've come to step back and think about the deep, deep, deep value in that. Why? Because so many of my friends are still in prison. And so if I am only valued for what I've done while I'm free, what does it mean about the lives that they have been living all of these years? And what does it mean about those dudes before us, who many of whom have died, right? But who did things while I was inside that might have kept me safe. But if nothing else kept my mind interested in being something other than somebody who was in prison, which is to say we recognize that even inside we were more than somebody who was in prison. And still, I want to say about myself, though, I come home and I find that one of the beauties of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is that, it meets you where you are. Because, see, I do actually remember this, right? I was 27. And I was in church on one of these Dr. King days. I think one of the things you do, like you said, you go to a book. You go to a book if you feel good. You go to a book if you feel bad. You go to the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. When you find yourself incapable of speaking eloquently, you go to the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to remind you that there are possibilities for you later in improving. But when you feel good about yourself, you go to the legacy. When you feel bad about yourself, you go to the legacy. So what happens is again, I'm kind of feeling good about myself, and I'm in one of those sermons about King. And it sneaks up on me, right? Because I thought I knew everything about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You got to understand me, right? And so they say, stand up if you're over 26 years old. And I felt good because at that point, I thought being 27 made me grown and old. I mean, now that I'm 32, Nah, I'm lying. I ain't 32. I'm 35. I would stop saying things because really I'm just looking at two of y'all, right? And I'm saying numbers and I'm looking for affirmation. And it's only from two of y'all. And I picked the wrong two people. So as I say a number, they like, and then I go up and I'm just wondering how high I'll go. And I'm afraid that I'll be like, you know, now that I'm 90, and they'll be like, I stand up and I feel good. I feel like I'm about to get praised in public. I'm with a woman. We're raising a child together. The baby's with us. And look, the baby ain't even got my name because I got good sense. I did a little time in prison. Dad did a little time in prison. I ain't rolling those dice. Nah. We called him Mackay Michael Zamir Betts. And he with us. And I'm thinking that I am about to be praised. And then the pastor says, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the bus boycotts when he was 26 years old. I was like, how did I not see that coming? It's interesting though. Because maybe the beautiful thing is that it's a legacy that again and again reminds you of who you are and who you might be. Again, I was asked to write this piece. And I am almost a professional procrastinator. No. I mean, I invent new ways to procrastinate. I told myself that to do this in the right way, I needed to use a fountain pen. And I'm going to be honest. I own a lot of fountain pens. I wondered if I was worthy of the task. And I go into the sneaker store because I tell myself that my entire team and my organization, Freedom Reads, one of our funders, they really generously gave us the funding to bring the entire team to Brian Stevenson's museum. And we were going there, and I said, well, when I get there, that's when I'll figure out what I want to write about, because I'll go there, and then I'll go and I'll cross the Pettus Bridge, and then I'll know what to say. So we get there, and I realized, honestly, why I was weeping when I was in prison. I mean, it wasn't just that I had this realization that I had wasted my life, because I would have felt like I wasted my life if, like, if I had became a degenerate. I mean, honestly, like, if I had became a degenerate, I would have felt like I wasted my life. I mean, if I, like, came home and never looked for a job and just like tried to leech off people who love me, I would feel like I wasted my life. If I ran in the streets right now with guns, I would feel like I wasted my life. I mean, there are a lot of things that would make me feel like I wasted my life. I think that ain't what it was about, right? So they have this memorial. And you go to the memorial and it has these giant cordon posts that, seriously, they look like they are falling from the sky. And on each one of them, it has the names of somebody who was lynched in the United States, an African-American person who was lynched. Or it says unknown. You shouldn't look for your name. I mean, part of the reason why you shouldn't look is because as much as you want to know history, you don't want to feel like you are history. And so I see my name and I'm devastated, right? And then I'm morbid and I want to record it because I want somebody else to know that it happened. But I can't find it. And my friend Tyler Sparaza is with me and he says, here it is. And I say, no, here it is. And it was there twice. I realized something on that trip. A few days ago, my friend Jermaine Bell, who I've been trying to get out of prison, now 4 years running, and I've consistently failed, right? I failed to get him out of prison again this year, right? This dude might be one of the most generous people I know. Last year when I failed to get him out, his mom had just died also, and he had called me and said, man, Shaheed, man, I'm sorry that I be putting all this on you. And I'm like, putting what on me? Anyway, he said I could say his name whenever I want. And I was thinking what I realized when I was there and I saw my name is that the friends that I'm struggling to get out of prison are convicted of murder. And I realized that part of what I've done as a public intellectual is pretend that because I was 16, I was less violent. Or because I was black, I was less violent. Or because my victim didn't die, I was less violent. But honestly, I am my friends because I have to be. Because I know the names of the ones that I've gotten out of prison who have murder convictions. And I know what they've done since they've been free. And I can say their names as well. But I realized something. We recognize something. I think that I've recognized something that maybe I won't speak for anybody else. I don't know if they even believe this, but this is what I believed when I was there. I have so much more in some ways. This thing that I have in common with the lynchers in some ways so dominates my life that it makes me more akin to them. And articulating the power of Stephen's Memorial as a place that is not to condemn, but to imagine peace is the thing that I am working to do in this thing called Freedom Reads. Man, I should tell y'all this. Listen, they told me straight up that because I am not a pastor, I am not a preacher. I have a time limit and I better respect it. And I understand that I said I had 3 stories and I'm already on 5. But I got to tell you this thing that happened, that I kind of talk about in this, but I don't remember. So I'm going to tell you because you got to get the book to see if it's actually in here. But you should know this one thing that happened. I went to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I'll just say this before I open it up for questions. Because they made me promise. Because this has never been written before. They made me promise that I need to leave at least 3 things in here that I didn't say. Oh, man, I already said that, so I can't go back to that. I can't tell you that either. Okay, hold up, wait. I can tell you this thing. I can tell you this thing. I took an Uber to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I don't even understand how me and this woman began to talk the way that we did, but we began to talk. And she had 2 blue ribbons tattooed behind her ear. And she told me that like her brother and her father had brain cancer. And then somehow we started like talking about, I read her a poem. And this is the story I never intended on telling you, but I shall tell it anyway. I read her a poem, and she had a tattoo of a pair, I think they were Jordans, the first ones though, with a dragon tongue coming out of it. And at that point, I knew that she was a sneakerhead, and I had on this beautiful Martin Luther King Jr. hoodie. And I never wear hoodies with people's faces on it, but I felt like I was going to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that seemed, as a poet, that seemed like if it ain't the universe talking to you, if it ain't God, then you don't believe in nothing. You know what I mean? You need to go ahead and buy that. So I bought it. But also that day I bought some Yeezys. I know, I felt like, I don't know, in the juxtaposition, but then I thought, dude, it's complicated. And so, get the shoes. And I'm in the car with this woman, and it's pouring down raining. And I wonder what I should do. Because I don't want to get the shoes wet. The shoes are beautiful. And if they get wet and it's rain, and listen, I feel ashamed telling you this story. I'm going to admit it. But I ain't want to get my shoes wet. And so this woman seemed to be just the person to ask what I should do. Oh, I should say my last book, Redaction, I wrote it for a really, really, really dear friend of mine who named Amy Lowe, who was a dear friend and a huge supporter of me, my work, and Freedom Reads. And in 2019, she told me she had colorectal cancer. And you ever have somebody tell you something and there's nothing that you could do? And I just figured, man, never before in my life had I thought poetry was supposed to have some like kind of real like deep-seated value. And I told her, you know what, I'm gonna write a poem for you every time you go to chemo. And then for the first time in my life, man, I wrote poems that were not about suffering. For the first time in my life, I just realized that, like, you do get to choose kindness. It's one kindness. It's the story you tell, and the recognition that there's always two stories to tell, right? And so what happens is when I first met this woman and she told me about those tattoos, I had a copy of this book, Redaction, that those poems became the book Redaction. And I was like, I got a book for you. And so I give her the book. And so I had sort of just began to trust her a little bit. So I'm like, what should I do about these sneakers? And it's pouring down rain, and it's a torrential downfall. And you hear me say downfall? That wasn't Freudian. It wasn't a downpour. It was a downfall. This is a bad decision. You ever talk to somebody and you ask them for permission to make a bad decision? And you want them to say what makes sense? She says, yo, go barefoot. The bridge is a 1/4 mile. I will match your impulsive. I went to prison at 16. I am not rational. I am now. I'm sorry. This is being live streamed. I usually say things like that when it's just us. No, I'm rational. I take my shoes off. Take my socks off. And then we realized that why would I take an umbrella in such a circumstance? It is a torrential downpour. People make better decisions. Leave your coat in here too. You know, karma. I mean, can I trust her? She asking me to leave my brand new Yeezys, my coat. My coat got my cell phone in it. I say, you know what? I'm gonna keep my cell phone. I'm gonna record this. I ain't even think about the distance from one side of the bridge to another. None of this makes sense, yo. I'm telling you. She drives off, not quickly. She gives me a beat to reconsider. She rolls down the window as if she has reconsidered. Like, yo, you sure? And I'm like, oh, now you're going to challenge me too? You must think I don't trust you. I was just thinking I ain't trust her. Man, maybe she's reading my mind. I'm sure. She goes to the other side. I'm one of them dudes that cries a lot these days, man. And now I am weeping and I'm on this bridge and I got the phone up to my face, right? And you got to understand something, actually. I do know the history of Bloody Sunday. And this happens to be the 111th, like it would have been 111th birthday of Rosa Parks. And I'm crossing this bridge. And I'm thinking about whatever woes that I'm carrying. And I realize that this is one of these bridges that when you fall from, you don't like walk away. And I'm trying to imagine again, folks, an entire spectrum of humanity, arms interlocked, walking towards snarling, towards hate, towards vengeance. And as I'm going this way, it's a couple that's going this way. And I'm barefoot and I'm weeping. And I see them, but I don't really pay attention to them. And I finish crossing. And as I get across, I turn around. And I see them, like literally right behind me. And I realize that I did look exactly like I was. A barefoot man weeping on a bridge. But I didn't expect them to do in a profoundly similar way what me and this woman had did for each other, which was to create a moment in which, like, what mattered, literally, was the moment. Now, you know, I realized that the reason I concede that I feel so much more akin to the lynchers than a lynched, to the people who did the killing than the people who were killed, because I want to acknowledge that I often feel segregated from the beloved community. I want to acknowledge that whatever makes me feel that way is the same thing that keeps parole boards all across this country from granting parole to people in prisons all across this country. That keeps us as citizens from saying people deserve second chances. And I get it, because we've all been there. I've been there. I literally wrote an essay, 5,000 to 6,000 words about what it means for my son, for me to be the son of a mom, for my mom to have been raped like 3 weeks after I got locked up. I get it. I've written about that. It took 10 years. She told me the day I came home, and then it took 10 years for us to discuss it a second time. And then another 3 years before I was like, you know what, Mom, can I write about this? Can we talk about it? So I get it. There are difficulties and challenges, but not confronting it leaves a certain chaos that we still live with, where so many of us still feel like we are excommunicated from the beloved community. And what I felt, and I'll end here, what I felt in that car with this woman whose name I don't even remember. I actually do remember her name. I remember nothing. I don't believe I remember her name. What I felt in that car was a kind of kinship that was deeply beyond and removed from some notion or identity of prison being a thing that determines why somebody cares about me. And it is the same thing that I felt when I just turned back to look at what I had overcome. And I saw this couple making sure that I was still safe. And maybe, ultimately for me, my hope is that my life is a testament to doing that more than it is to the chaos that, I wrecked on my community when I was a child. Thank you.